Sarah?
Yes, Alex?
Do you ever wish you were still monogamous?
Nope, not really. Only on the days when Reagan Jackson comes to interview us about it. Welcome, everyone, to Mistakes Were Made. I'm Sarah. I am a queer, polyamorous therapist, writer, and parent.
And I'm her husband and co-host, Alex.
And I'm Jessica, here producing, usually the only monogamous present on the podcast, but not today.
Because today we have our special guest, Reagan Jackson, who is activist, author, artist, incredible karaoke singer.
Thank you.
And the occasional lovable skeptic who comes on Mistakes Were Made to ask us the really tough questions. So welcome, Reagan.
Thank you. Happy to be back. Surprised to be back.
Do you want to know why you're back?
Yes, please tell me.
So the reason why you're back, I mean, I love you, and I always have a great time doing anything with you, especially creative things. And also, a man that I am dating put in a special request to have you back on the show because he has listened to the entire show and said that he felt like you did the best job of pinning Alex and I to the things we didn't want to talk about.
Ooh, that sounds fun and exciting, like a colonoscopy for the soul. Okay.
Ew. A solonoscopy.
So yes, we have him to thank for this.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm like, of course I have more questions. What? Like, did I ever stop?
No, you have not ever stopped having questions. And I think that's something that I've really appreciated about our conversations around this in the 4+ years now that you and I have been polyamorous, because I feel like Reagan, most people's response to it has either been to almost completely ignore it, like not say anything about it ever again.
Bruno, right? We don't talk about that.
Right. We don't talk about that. Another common response is to assume that I'm going to try and sleep with them, or that Alex is going to try and sleep with them.
Oh, I've never had that assumption.
And I feel like
now I'm a little insulted.
Right. Wait a second. Why not?
Okay, back up though. Come on, Alex. All right, coming out swinging out the gate. Now that I've had 4 years to look at who you're dating, Sarah. Yes, I'm calling you out.
For what?
For dating Sarah over and over again.
Oh, you think
packages.
so?
Yes.
Maybe.
Sarah doppelgangers.
Like, are you talking about physically, or are you talking about personality-wise?
Yes.
Both? I could see the physical one. I don't think the personality one sticks,
Sarah
though.
Sarah Light.
I mean, should we like parse out all of the different layers of this right now?
Okay, I like this. I like the energy that we're bringing to this right away.
I would say it's adversarial.
I feel like now I'm realizing Reagan is about to skip town tomorrow.
Yeah, she did tell us she was like headed to the airport right after this.
She's like,
I'll make amends in 2025.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay.
No, what is it? We listen, but we don't judge.
We listen, but we don't judge.
And okay, I have a reframe for that actually, because I've been sitting with that, like feeling like sometimes I'm like, I bet some of my questions and my comments come off as pretty judgmental, and that's like definitely not my intention. So to reframe the intention, I'd say I listen to understand.
Oh, you're reframing that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense. Not just not judging, but also understand.
Yeah. I mean, judgment, I feel like judgment is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
But if the intention is always for the purpose of understanding, that's where like the loving skeptic part comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not.
Yeah.
I'm not here to hold you accountable. I'm absolutely fine minding my business, more or less.
I might be lovingly skeptical about that last one.
And if we wanted you to mind your business, we wouldn't have asked you to come on the podcast. So I don't think you have to do that.
One of the things I was going to say in the intro is that, you know, the most common responses that people have are to ignore it, to like have sort of a salacious response and then usually ignore it after that. One of the things I've really appreciated about our conversations in the past 4.5 years is that you've kept being interested in how
Yeah.
our lives around this have unfolded. In the same way, I feel like we've continued to be interested in how your love life unfolds and like some of the complexities and dramas of that. And so it feels like it's been a dynamic conversation. And I think it's interesting to have you come back now, these years later, and see where we're at.
Yeah, and like those kinds of questions, that was not a particularly pointed question, I don't think. It makes you think about, like responding to them makes you like think about things in a way that is like interesting and fun.
It's a learning journey,
so,
I think, for both of us. Like,
sure. Yeah. The way that I think about like who my type is definitely like demographically similar to Sarah, and like in terms of people like with kids and like same age life stage and stuff, that is definitely intentional. Like I think one of the things that I've learned is that it's a lot like easier, or it just like makes a lot more sense in this context to date people who are like in that same life stage, and in that same like can relate to you as parents, like having a fellow parent to be like sort of mutually supportive, people who have kids, and then I get to see that their kids are as crazy as our kids is honestly really nice.
I really appreciate that about the people you date too.
And it's like hard to date people who are not, I mean, I guess people who haven't had that experience yet, and or who are like younger. Like I have done a fair amount of dating like younger people without kids, and it's like challenges come up for sure. So that piece of it is.
What would you say those challenges are?
Those challenges are, I mean, mainly this is like a whole, what's it called? A whole kettle of fish to dig into, whatever is the phrase. But like mainly it's like the question of like, are you going to do that? And do you still want to? And then like the feeling that like kind of like that I am like a distraction from that. Like if a person has their sight set, a woman probably has their sight set on like having children or having a primary partner or whatever, like being a person who's not going to do that with them on a longer timeline, those relationships kind of do start to feel like I'm a distraction from doing that. And maybe that's inside of like me, but I think it's a bit of a thing.
oh man, I've got like 2 segue questions off of that. So one would be kind of going back to Sarah, because Sarah, I feel like when I'm looking at who you've dated over the past 4 years, is wildly different from Alex. So I'm like wondering kind of like how y'all feel about that. And then I'd like to come back though to what are like your relationship goals when you're dating. But
yeah, okay. So a follow-up on the does Alex date versions of me over and over again. I have heard you say this before, and it's funny because my observation of that is like demographically and physically, I know what you're talking about and that you're right. And then I always feel insecure about the ways they seem really different from me. And this is my shit, okay? I've said this to you before. I always feel like they seem like more wholesome than I am in some ways.
good girl, Sarah.
Oh yeah, or like maybe less trouble, or like less volatile, or less something. Like there's like this way that I feel sometimes insecure in that, and that I'm like.
So you don't take the compliment of like, huh?
Not exactly.
Yeah.
No. And I mean, that probably just speaks to how squirrely and persistent my insecurity can be, because it will find an angle anywhere, you know, but that's something I'm always like, they seem like maybe they're better or more committed parents than I am, or that they're like less, maybe even like in some ways more mature, you know? I know y'all are laughing at me.
I mean, if I was going to like make an observation that's not really even in that realm, I don't think like personality wise, like they're probably more femme than you are.
That too. And I think sometimes I feel
maybe you're kind of
about
circling around that.
Yeah.
I don't know about any of those other things.
Yeah.
I plead the fifth on those ones.
And then on the other opposite end of the spectrum, here's Sarah dating lots of people who don't resemble Alex in many, many ways.
In what sense?
Well, some of them are women.
Right.
A lot of them are.
Well, yeah, good point.
That's
good
one
point.
big difference.
Good point. Yeah.
You know? But also just they're different. They're
I have
different
never
types.
dated a man who was married with children in any serious way.
That's interesting.
Ever.
Yeah.
I haven't dated seriously that many men, but of the, 3 where it was like more consistent and lasted for more than 6 months, none of them were married. None of them had kids. And all of them were at least a little younger than me, within like 5 years usually, but younger than me, not older.
Oh yeah, I mean, let's get into it. What's the dating criteria? What are you looking for? What, like, when you're swiping, you're like, oh yeah, like, what is that? Yeah, for you.
I think sometimes a little bit with men, that's a mystery to me. Until
Girl, me too.
it's like, okay, so you know what I'm talking about. And then you're like 6 months into a relationship, and you're like, this person has a lot in common with the other guys that I've dated, and you can't like really see it in the moment. I think probably with like the age and stage stuff, I really want to be with men who have like a lot of time and energy and attention that they can focus on me. I mean, not in a like
Oh yeah.
daily way, but in a like, I want to feel like they're consistently excited about me and able to maintain that. And I think like men who are married, older than me, and have kids, that can be hard, and like there have been like a couple of guys who are more fell into that category, and like we would have relationships that looked a little bit more like we met up like once a month and went out for a nice dinner and then couldn't go back to anybody's house because there were kids there. So made out in a car in a parking lot. And like that was fun in its own right. But I think it was hard for me to ever really like get past that level with them a little bit. Why are you laughing?
I don't know, just past the making out in the car level. It's funny.
I also don't mind making out in a car, but
to the like spending money on a hotel level. Is that the next level?
that's kind of what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I want to know about this escalator.
Yeah, he goes making out in a car, spending money on a hotel,
If they have kids.
going away
Partner.
somewhere else for multiple days.
Oh, and also, whose money is this? Ooh,
We just-
see, everybody got real quiet. I said the M word.
That
mean-
depends.
We just spend a lot of money.
Yeah, we
on,
spend a lot of money on it.
Ooh, it's like dating a line item on your taxes. Like, okay, like
It's not deductible as far as I know. Unfortunately.
even for the show, like, no, this is.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Music
it's true.
doing, actually, that's a great
Research.
point.
Yeah, we should be writing it all off of Sarah's
It's really
business.
It can be really expensive, and sometimes I feel sheepish about that. Which is
Yeah,
this is
that's
a good
why we got
question that I
quiet.
don't want to talk about. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like hard to defend. Sometimes
I don't think
how
it's a
much money
source
I
of
spend on
tension
it.
between the two of us because we're both kind of extra in this
Being
way,
bad.
in the same way, and like, yeah, I feel sheepish about it in general, but
Yeah.
I don't know. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, great question.
I mean, that's sometimes what I think about. I'm like, there's a lot more that we could do with our time and money,
Yeah.
and we are not choosing to do
Well, I mean, like, what are you gonna do with money? Like, fucking buy shit or invest it in the stock market so that
Yes.
you can use it to.
that. I think this is the
Fund your
wrong
children's-
argument to take with Reagan.
Well, college
Did you just
education.
call me a capitalist? No.
Yeah, pretty much.
Boo.
I'm also just imagining our kids listening to this episode like 20 years from
Right,
now. They're
when
like,
they
you
didn't
could
go
have
to
been
college."
investing in our fucking futures
Yeah.
instead of being sluts.
Yeah. I mean, to like be on the nose about it also, like this year, things have happened personally with my family that have like put the like generational wealth front and center. And so it's definitely been a little bit more of a like, well, shit feels bad because people are dying and I'm going to respond to that by like
Taking
treating
hot ladies to
myself a
hotels.
little more or whatever, or not like worrying about money in the same way.
Treat yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's expensive. And Also, as a general rule, the men that I date don't tend to have very much money.
Is that true? That's not true.
You're anti-capitalist.
That's not
much?
true.
You
That
can't
is
even,
not true,
deal
Sarah.
with the men with money. What's up?
How is
That's
that?
not what I heard.
Oh.
Well, like, there was the person who was always just paying for everything because they had a
I'm just gonna sip some tea.
Microsoft job.
That guy is one of the guys that we never got out of the parking lot.
Okay.
Because
But he bought you a lot of dinners.
Come on. No.
Out of dinners.
And I don't want to like put other people on blast, but I've heard things about trust funds and things like that.
Yeah, but I mean to say I tend to have more like professional and economic power.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
If I'm being more
Yes. Yeah.
specific.
Right. And that is more meaningful as a woman in a relationship with a man than
Okay, so as you're in the polyamorous dating situation, like who is paying for these dates? Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's not you. Like how do you decide that?
We talked about this on text a little bit, and I did think it was interesting because you were like asking questions about when you're dating men. Oh yeah. Like who should pay, or like I want to hear about your philosophy about that.
Oh, for me, like I defer to my dating coach, who's like, the man is going to pay, or you're not going to go out on a date with him. Mm-hmm. That's hard.
Put a pin in that dating coach thing. We're going to come back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, that's like, it's a little bit difficult because that's not actually how I was socialized. Like, I'm really independent and feminist, and I have my own money for a reason. So to me, like, there's a part of me that would prefer to split dates. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying something new. Because you have to do something different to get different results, and I don't love the results I've gotten in the past in terms of dating. So, and
like you've had relationships, like kind of like Sarah's alluding to, where you had more economic power than the person, or felt like you were, and then that was like a source of tension in the relationship.
It became a source of tension because then I feel like they got really comfortable, like leaning on me financially in ways that I did not consent to, that we did not agree upon. Like men, like some of the men that I've dated have been really poor communicators around things like that, and then they would begin to assume things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be clear, and answer your question more just logistically, I split things with people. Mm-hmm. Everybody that I date, we split things. And
but not split like every
no
dinner. You would like trade off or whatever.
Trade off, yeah. And there's like some sense of like that being in balance. Mm-hmm. I don't kind of, I'm not in relationships where I'm paying for more things. And I guess now that we're talking about it, I'm realizing some of the men who I've dated where didn't ever really get serious, and they were more in the like rich, my age, kid's wife, or older category. Mm-hmm. They did pay for stuff a lot. And there were things about that I liked, but I think there were things about it I really didn't like too. And maybe some of my own stuff around the power imbalance between men and women, I don't know that it feels good to me when men have a lot more like economic power than me too, and they're exerting it or flexing it inside the relationship. And I'm realizing in one of those cases where it was more that dynamic, we did end up going back to his house. He had paid for almost everything. Then we had like a sexual experience there that was a little sloppy, is what I would say, and didn't feel great, not because he did anything wrong, but because we were not doing a good job of communicating with each other. Mm-hmm. And this is like something I'm kind of embarrassed to admit, but he had like paid for me to take a car there, and it was really expensive. And then there was this question of like, how was I going to get back home after this like sexual experience? I did actually have him pay for that too. Good. Because also at that time, and I'm not exaggerating, I did not have the money to pay for it. It's not like I couldn't have called one of you. I could have, but I did. But I think I had like a number of experiences like that, maybe in the first couple of years of doing polyamorous dating with men. And I was like, I don't like the way this feels. Like, I think I like it better when there is some adjusting for the power imbalance that I'm so aware of between men and women, or it just like leveling it out. Otherwise, I think I feel a little bit scared sometimes.
Like because of kind of that thought process of, oh, if he pays for this, then I'm entitled to.
Just even if there's a whisper of that, I think it's like working in the back of my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember in that situation being like, no, I'm going to have him pay for me to go back, because I was like kind of trying to internally work against that. I was like, no, he got me here. He's going to pay for me to get out of this. I'm not going to, like, that was the agreement. It's going to stay the agreement, and it's not going to change because of this like sloppy sexual experience that we had. But it like took some work, and then it like took some like me working it out on the other side too. So
I just hear my grandma being like, always have $20 in your pocket. Like she was really big into that, although 20 doesn't really get you as far as it used to. Yeah, basically. But that sense, so that safety of being like, if anything goes wrong or anything goes south, I'm out.
Yeah. This is not a story that I've told many people because I am embarrassed that at this point in my life, I wasn't like a little more aware of that, or I kind of let myself get into that situation. So yeah, the money, sex stuff with men, and I don't fucking think about it at all with women.
Fascinating.
I do not think about that at all. Because I also just don't think, I'm not going into my relationships with women aware of this essential power imbalance between the two of us that I'm always kind of navigating, whether it's internal or external.
Even if you date women of color?
I am aware of it then. Yeah. I am more aware of it then.
Yeah.
For sure.
Interesting.
And I'm also more aware of how the power difference and dynamics change when I date men of color too. And so there are like calculations that are happening internally and externally there as well, for sure.
Fascinating. Also, like,
is this what you wanted? Is this what you came here for?
Yes, absolutely. Give it to me. I want to know. I want to talk about it. Let's get into it. But also I want to pause around the embarrassment piece. And I'm like, why do I want to pause here? I want to pause because I don't think you have to be embarrassed. I mean, and it's okay. Like, you manage your own feelings. You can feel however the fuck you want to feel. But what comes up for me about this is you're like, what, just 4 years into, so this is your bachelor's degree and like learning about polyamory?
Yeah, that feels like it. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Like maybe you don't know everything about how you're going to feel or think or what you want or what you need.
What you're saying is, I didn't know everything before, but now I do. That's what I'm hearing.
Right. Well, this was like a year plus ago,
I'm
too.
saying come back when you have that PhD.
Oh, God damn it.
You know what I mean? Like, you know something.
Yeah.
You've learned a lot. I've learned a lot just from listening to this podcast. I learned tons. But also, like, I think we're so conditioned to categorize everything as like good or bad, or like, oh, I did a good job, I did a bad job. Like, everything has a grade. And I think of this as like a different type of exploration.
Yeah.
Where like the important piece is what you learn on the other side of that. Right. It's like, oh, I had this experience. How am I going to learn from it? Internalize what happened. Like, oh, I felt uncomfortable by this. Like, do I need to shift my boundaries? Do I need to ask more questions? Do I need to, like, what do I need to do in order to set myself up for success in the next situation?
And I think a lot about that. And this may be a moment where I get to ask you a few things about the dating coach, because I'm curious about that. And it's like also a non-traditional way of going about dating, I'm
a non-traditional woman.
Sure are.
We've learned this part.
You sure are. But like a couple of things that have been on my mind recently, Nikki Giovanni, the poet and activist who just passed last week, I hope I'm getting her quote right. I think she said, "The only true adventure is love." And I've been thinking about that a lot and what it means for something to be a true adventure. And how baked into that is that you're always learning. You're going to be scared sometimes. You make mistakes. You don't just land somewhere and stay there, right? But there's like a dynamism to the experience. And then also, I had someone reflect here recently. They said that it felt like the first part of my adulthood was a lot of external adventuring, and the second part of my adulthood has seemed more like an internal sort of exploring. And so listening to you talk about dating and love and how we learn through it just made me think of those things.
I love that. I love that quote. Mm-hmm. I know when you said it, I was imagining like some of the adventures I had when I was 20, and I really didn't know what I was doing at all, and how stressful that was. And just, yeah, like to make the analogy, I guess, I realized that's how I felt a lot, like about a lot of my love life. Is like, I don't feel like until literally just this year, like I even understood the assignment of like what I was supposed to be doing or how I was supposed to be doing it. And not to say that there's like only one way to do something, but I feel like there was like the frameworks were so loose. And I don't think I really like took the time to think through like, this is what would make me happy, or this is the type of relationship I want to be in, other than like, I know I identify as monogamous because I've never wanted to like be in romantic relationship with multiple people at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And you know, the more polyamorous I am, the more that makes sense.
Yo, it's stressful with one person. Like, I don't know how y'all manage it. Like, you know, like just everybody else's emotional state. Like I just...
If you want to hear more from Reagan, you should check out her book, Still True.
The Evolution of an Unexpected Journalist, available wherever books are available.
Wow, have you said that before? Yes, we just saw it prominently displayed at Elliott Bay Book Company here in Seattle.
Yeah.
The best bookstore in town.
We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, it's great.
Soon to be released as an audiobook, am I right?
That's right.
Oh, yeah. My favorite part is the acknowledgments and thank you section at the end. For some reason, I don't know. There's some like really cool people in there.
Okay, no, but actually, I want to give a little bit of a review. I got to blurb the book.
Ooh, that's true.
And so for folks who are like, okay, Reagan's obviously really cool, and so the stuff that she writes is going to be great, you are correct. She's an incredible writer, and you'll never be sorry that you bought one of her books. This one in particular feels really relevant to right now. And it's interesting because it also felt really fucking relevant when it came out, or when it was like the material was being generated for it in the kind of like, what would you say are the years of some of that material?
Yeah, I mean, well, so it's a decade, like, just to kind of give an overview of, like, what this book is even. It's, like, a decade time capsule of my journalism from, like, 2013 to 2023. And a lot of it tells stories of South Seattle, but also it's kind of using that globalist tagline where Seattle meets the world. So looking at the broader issues of gender, race, and class in a global and hyper-local context.
And I would also say those themes, as they apply to Seattle, are really easily universalized, at least across this country. And some of the things about what it's like to stay in a place as it changes around you, what it's like to be an agent of change inside of that place, what it's like to build community through incredibly tumultuous times, how the individual impacts the collective and the collective impacts the individual. And all of the ways that our lives intersect with this wild time that we're living in. I feel like your writing always does this. This book really does it, and that is the vibe that I want to be taking into 2025. So, listeners, get the book. Yeah,
appreciate that. And appreciate Jessica for recording the audiobook.
All right.
My question.
All right, I'm back. Okay. I'm in the hot seat. I'm ready.
Right. Yeah.
Do your worst, Reagan Jackson.
Oh my God. Why is it got to be bad?
Yeah.
Do your best.
Why can't this be
these are
like...
Reagan has some very good questions. I got a leaked list of some of the questions.
Right.
Okay.
And,
well, I mean,
she always does.
Let's stop at the top. Start at the top. You know,
okay.
like it's been some time since you've been doing this. Like, how has your relationship with one another changed since you've become open?
That is a huge question.
It is.
I love it. I would say right off the top of my head, it feels less codependent to me on my side. I feel like I have a little more emotional autonomy and space, and like Alex can be going through something and it doesn't necessarily provoke a huge reaction in me. And I think in that sense, it feels like we're sturdier partners and friends because of that. And we can weather, we've weathered some like tough times over the course of those 4 years. And there's been like a lot of death and a lot of loss and a lot of parenting and a lot of changes. And I think since we opened up, like we navigate those things in a much more mature way. And I feel like I'm more able to be in some discomfort in our relationship. Like things don't have to be perfect to be okay. I think I can sit in some discomfort around like you struggling and that being okay.
Yeah.
Me struggling and that being okay. So that's like my big positive takeaway.
Yeah. I think we probably understand each other a lot better. And for a relationship, like a really long relationship like ours that was monogamous for a long time, I think you can't underestimate how like the seeing yourself date other people and seeing your partner date other people gives you this information about all of the things that you're thinking and feeling about your relationship, like which of those things are actually about your relationship and which of those things are about you as individuals. Because if Sarah's over here like doing the same shit with somebody else that she's doing with me, it helps me be like, oh, that's not
That's not about me.
That's a Sarah thing. And like,
You're welcome.
and same thing, even more so for me, like, oh, I just have this same feeling of the same dynamic with this other person that I'm dating, or like the 19 other people that I've dated since we've been open. Like, clearly that's not something, you know, about Sarah. It's something about me. And like having that discernment is like very, very helpful in like trusting your partner, understanding your partner, and like loving them more too, I think. Because like some of the like shit that might be resentment. I mean, this makes me think about like my sister told me once that
I don't think she listens to this podcast.
Well,
so
I'm just going to say what I think this was good advice. She was like, she was married and then she got divorced and she got married again. And she was like, I thought that all the shit that like drove me crazy about my first husband was because of him. And then with my second husband, half that shit was still there. And so it turns out it was shit about me, you know? And like, yeah, that's like some hard-earned ass wisdom that is kind of specific to monogamy. I'm much happier to have not had to start an entire life and family over again to get that wisdom. Like, it's cool to be able to get it in small ways.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think one of the other things has changed, and it speaks to the emotional autonomy and some of like the maturity and some of the knowing what's yours and what's someone else's, that can sometimes make me feel a little sad, though, and is worth talking about, is just that like the romance and the emotional intensity and the just like that being the person that you always go to for that. Sometimes I do miss that, you know? Like the consistency of it being that person as opposed to like spreading it out to maybe some other people that are
Yeah, and I think like this maybe gets into larger existential questions about polyamory.
that there are ways where like you can take parts of yourself elsewhere where they're a little more accepted, or there's a little more space for them, or there's a little more opportunity to express them, and that feels good and can relieve pressure on our relationship. But sometimes like I'm like, well, I want to bring some of that intensity back over here. And some of the things that like sometimes are like harder for you to accept about me over here. That's just something I've been thinking about.
But it sounds like then there's more space for that to even happen because there's been kind of the release valve of other people.
I think that's true. Yeah. I think that is true.
I've been thinking about this because I'm like, I think Jess had asked me like kind of about my evolution, like whether like had my position around polyamory changed at all? And I'm like, not for me personally. Like, I think I'm just a monogamist. I think that that's true for me. But for y'all, yeah, it has. I like it better than I did when you guys first brought it up. I was like, ooh, this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
This is like a train wreck waiting to happen. But it didn't happen. That's not what happened.
It's just been a really long, slow train wreck.
Yeah. It's just like kind of wobbly and like stalls out a lot.
Yeah, but nobody did.
Nobody's dead.
The train is still on the tracks.
Divorced.
Yeah.
Everything's okay. Enough. Okay, enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And then also, your capacity to be okay has expanded.
And I think then kind of speaking to that bringing things back into our relationship, Alex, it does feel more like choice and it feels a little less desperate. It feels a little bit less like if I'm going to get intimacy, acceptance, passion, romance, sex, I have to get it here,
Right.
And so it can feel a little more personalized to us.
Yeah, and more
I
like
feel
a choice.
Make choices.
Like coming from the person who just said that my desire to date was based on like affirming my self-worth. Like,
Yes,
I
we were
know that
coming
I
back
can
to that.
go do that.
Did you write that down? You wrote that down.
Absolutely.
Like, that is clearly like possible. And like, honestly, I think that was part of my original motivation. I didn't know it, but like, that was like sort of a thing that was missing, that I was like, I know that this one person likes me in this way, but are the only person who ever would. And
wow.
now I know that no, other people would and do, which I mean, with respect to our relationship, that means that like I'm in it for more of the right reasons, I think. Right.
Like you believe Sarah's actually choosing you and it's not just like, oh.
Yeah.
We ended up together.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people who got married in their 20s, that is a question that can hang over the marriage.
Oh, interesting.
Is like, would we choose each other now? Would we have chosen each other 10 years ago?
Well, and then people are like, would anybody else choose me? And then if they're in a monogamous relationship, they go cheat to find out whether or not they would. And maybe in doing that, they fuck up the original relationship that was a good one. Or, they end up in another one that isn't great.
Well, so, okay, like what are your relationship goals? I feel like I've asked this 3 times and y'all have to answer this.
Goals for like what we want to, like why
you out
we're
there dating?
doing. Yeah.
And then both, like I want to know your relationship goals for one another now that like you're kind of redefining your marriage, and then your relationship goals for these other people that you date. Like what are you trying to accomplish?
What are we trying to accomplish? That's a real
Everybody
like.
Got tired or stressed out or
I
something.
think I have to pee again.
Yeah. I'm going to just deflect that to be like, that sounds like a real capitalist mindset. Like we have to accomplish something, Reagan.
You
like,
touched a nerve when Alex says
There you
capitalist.
go.
can't we
mindset.
just be? No.
Okay. I'm gonna take it.
Not today.
Damn it. Okay.
I think that being able to pull out and explore parts of myself that don't always fit into my life as a parent and a partner and a professional and the therapist and all of the things, like having places where parts of me that were like got maybe left behind at different points in my life, dynamics that I've always been curious about, but never really had space for, got a chance to explore. I think like the experience of being intimate and loving multiple people is one that is an adventure to me, like, to go back to our quote. And I think that adventure, it goes in really unexpected places. And that's one of the big things that I've learned over the course of these 4 years is like, there is no predicting how these things unfold really. And that makes them exciting to me. And in a way, like, I don't know, you can relate to this. I guess you still live a pretty outwardly adventurous life. But, for much of my life, it was like outwardly adventurous. And I got to go and like get kind of lit up by the world and explore unexpected things and not know where it was going to go. And life can get pretty predictable when you're in this particular stage. And I think like falling in love with people, exploring like lesser known parts of me, maybe more shadowy parts of me sometimes, maybe more bad parts of me, and maybe more good parts of me for that matter. It's a way that it keeps me feeling like internally, like it's enlivening to me and it's exciting. And also getting to know other people at that kind of depth is exciting. And then the like kind of alchemy that's created between you, like it's just all so outrageous. And so that I really, really enjoy it. And I think my goals are to try and keep opening to the possibilities of relationships as I explore them more and try and control the outcomes less. you know? Yeah.
And then, okay, so that makes sense to me around like what it is internally for you. But then you have a whole other person, or there's somebody on the other side of this.
Doing?
Yeah, or like, what do you want them to be doing? Like, I mean, how are they involved in this journey with you? Or like, what are you expecting, or your intentions? Are you like, okay, well, I'm going to date this person and we're going to do this, and I'm going to date this person and this is what we can co-create? Like, what are you trying to build?
I mean, I think I'm trying to meet people where we build it together, and we build it together within the context of community and bigger relationships. And that feels like the experiment to me. And I think that's like, there's not a lot of models in my life for how to do that. And that's my goal, is I'm like, can I find other people who want to be exploratory, be curious, co-create things, do it within the context of like alternative communities and like ways of loving and being together, and like see what we can make, see what it can look like and feel like. And yeah, that doesn't sound like I'm looking for someone that I see twice a week, and you know, one of them will be a man, one of them will be a woman, and you know, it's
It's funny that you described what you have achieved.
Shots fired. Okay.
but yeah, so that's my answer. I'm gonna stop talking now.
Yeah, everything she said was good answers. No, I think for me, there's like a couple of layers of answer. There's like the aspirational one, and then there's the like self-reflective, which maybe veers into self-critical sometimes for me. But in the aspirational one, I think like right now, especially like being able to have the experience, like have like relationships that feel like they're generative, and where like I'm like finding out new ways to like be in community and relationship with people who are like different kinds of people with different experiences than me. You know, I've been like experimenting with like dating men and dating non-binary people, and you know, yeah, just like, and dating in different ways. Like we've been kind of talking about some of those like gendered scripts. And like, I think there's things that are really like validating and feel really good about dating in relationships that kind of like play on those scripts and those power dynamics. And like, that's kind of like deep psychology stuff that like, I think everybody is doing. It feels like a little bit like icky to like dig super deep into it. But like part of it is that, and doing that, and like, you know, understanding for myself, like, why do I like really care about like how women feel about me, and like making them happy. And it's like, you know, shit about my mom and blah, 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 like that level of stuff. And then there's the goal of creating other relationships that like, there's a relationship that sort of like affirm that and like help me like learn through that stuff. And then there's the relationships that like help me like disrupt that, or like think about how to disrupt that and do those things in different ways. So all of that shit is just kind of like personal growth stuff, but it's also fun. And I think that's the other piece, is just like kind of having fun, using the term really loosely because it is often quite miserable as well. But,
Okay.
you know, like that level of just like learning stuff about yourself is like hard.
It's also like more people to make things with in this world.
Yeah.
And in a way, the kind of bond and depth and interest in each other that is generated when you have like romantic sexual relationships with people gets you to, at least for me, that space where you can make things together. And that's really exciting. And I think that is always a goal of my relationships. And whether that's like, we're going to make queer community together, or we're going to make like different parenting styles together, or we're going to make a zine, or you're going to like write a poem about me, or whatever. But like it's like creative in that way. And I think that's something that I really need in my life, and I really need in my life in this world right now. And dating kind of like helps me find avenues to that too.
Yeah. The muse thing is real. Like that's a goal, is like being somebody's muse and like having somebody be mine or like many people and like, yeah, that sort of creative generative thing.
Can we walk back a little bit to when you just kind of casually disclose that you might be dating men or non-binary people too? Do you identify as queer?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say yes.
How recently has that?
I mean, like I've been co-organizing a happy hour that's like a queer enough happy hour along the lines of sort of inspired by the one that Sarah and Mads originally organized. And so that's been like 6 months. And I think the purpose of that is to
like memo that was like, stay.
Yeah. Everybody in that happy hour basically is like, they're all like men or like mask people. And they're all basically like, we end up just telling each other the same thing over and over again, that like, just say that you're queer. Don't like be timid about it and feel like you're not queer enough to say that. So yes, I will say it.
Take this as the coming out episode.
Yeah.
Yay.
I love it. Now, going back to Stutes, like, what's like the best thing you've gotten to make?
Well, I've done some writing about my experiences in polyamory for sure. I think it's really, really influenced the writing that I've done in the past 4 years. And it's pretty centered in a lot of it. I actually just had an interview come out in Psychology Today about the intersection of polyamory and radical politics.
Oh my God, can't wait to read it.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the obvious answer. As you know, I'm deep into writing a book inspired by experiences in polyamory and intersections with mental health and radical politics. And there's something else, like there's something less tangible underneath it. Like, I really do think the community that I've been able to make, especially in queer relationships and queer dating, has felt like one of the most important things that I've been able to like bring into the world through polyamory.
That's beautiful.
You know, I'm on like 14 different Signal chats and all of these happy hours and like mutual aid stuff. And it's like all kind of been generated through polyamorous dating, queer dating in some way. I think there's a way that like, I mean, we even made music together with, you know, one of my exes. So that was another thing that came into the world. And I also think like the way I communicate with people, the way I bring it onto the podcast, like all of that material is just, I don't know. It's always like regenerating itself. There's always new things.
Like a starfish.
Yeah, like a starfish. Yeah. Or, you know, this might segue into one of your questions here. Parenting. Like, it has changed me so much as a parent, and it has like really pinned me to what are my values? How do I talk to my kids about sex and love and relationships and community? What do I show them? And that feels creative too. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to know about that. Like we had kind of an initial, what are you talking to the kids about? And I'm wondering like how that has evolved over these last 4 years.
Take it away, Al.
Yeah, I think that they are obviously older, and as they've become older, they've become more aware of not only like our family's like relationship style or like, you know, the makeup of our family, but also their own like identities and even sexualities. I don't know if that's exactly the appropriate word, but like they both like have identified themselves as being gay at different times. And so I think all of that is probably to some extent like connected to them having exposure to us, like having romantic lives at all, I guess, and like having, you know, sexual and gender identities that like I think for
and that also
like,
have changed over the course of their lives, so they've watched that.
Yeah. And probably like straight monogamous parents are probably not really, their kids probably just aren't really thinking about that at all. And maybe there's sometimes like a bit of a like fear about that happening, you know, like just like, oh my God, the kids aren't going to be able to deal with this and they're going to be corrupted and whatever. But I don't believe in that anymore.
Yeah,
like,
kids are pretty resilient and they learn and evolve and adapt.
Yeah. And like, I think generally speaking, more information is good for kids, especially like more sort of like vulnerable information from the adults in their lives. Like, you know, there are like limits to that, but I want them to know that we are like people who like have relationships and
Change and struggle.
yeah. So that when they do that, when they experience that, they like know that they can come to us to talk about those things.
There is tension around it because I'm always aware of the kind of stereotypes of, I mean, queer parents, poly parents, queer poly parents are always having to answer this question of, what about the kids? Aren't you hurting the kids? Shouldn't kids be protected from adult sexuality at all costs?
I didn't ask that question.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think sometimes with our parents' generation, there was an inappropriate level of, I mean, it depends, but there was sometimes like inappropriate levels of sexual disclosure. There was a lot of parentification of kids by their parents. I know so many people who had the experience of like being the confidant of a parent when it came to their romantic lives or their sex lives or their dissatisfaction in relationships. So I don't, as a parent and as like a therapist, I don't think it's a good idea to have like less boundaries with children when it comes to these topics. But I think there's a way to be boundaried and to stay age appropriate with the information and keep like offering it to the kids and be attuned to what they want to hear more about, right? And sort of like keep centering what is their experience in all of this as much as possible. And one of the things that I've noticed about our kids is they will remember and forget kind of over and over again that we're polyamorous, you know?
Yeah.
And then we're kind of like back to talking about it. And it's because they're at a different age and their ability to understand it has deepened or changed, right?
Yeah. And if there was like a philosophy for how to treat it with them, I think for us, it probably is like answer the things that they ask. And like, you can even see between our two kids, like there'll be a thing that the older one is really interested in and asking us questions about. And like, to your point a second ago, Sarah, the younger one is not even hearing it because they don't care or understand at that age. So I do think that like,
I also think like letting them opt into how much
exactly
of that community or that world they want to be a part of. So Alex and I just recently kind of came to the conclusion that if we're at the point in a relationship where it would make sense for a partner to meet our kids, just because of the amount of time that we're spending together, or just the depth of the relationship, the kids will always know, like, I'm going out, I tell them who I'm going out with, that we ask them if they want to meet the person, and then give some options for how they could do that and let them have time to think about it. And I still struggle with how to make the option of not wanting to meet the person okay. You know, I think like kids always kind of are trying to read what you want in a situation. And so it's hard to stay neutral and let them really like lead it. But
our kids also almost never don't want to meet a person regardless of the context.
they really do like meeting people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and so then what, right? So they meet these people. What happens when you break up?
Yeah.
I mean, what happens when people fucking move to New York or whatever? Like, that's
People leave.
certainly like the most traumatic breakup change in our kids' relationships, or like with adults like that, have been not in this context, but because people moved or whatever, shit like that. So I don't know. It's like, that's an issue if you're getting into like co-parent stage or whatever.
But it seems like that's not part of the goal.
But no, that's not really part of the goal. And like our kids' friends' parents, or like people who we're friends with outside of like romantic contexts, are much more probably of like attachment figures for our kids than the people that we're dating at this point. And even if they became so, I just don't like feel like it's really an issue that I like
That big
worry
of a
about
thing?
that much. Yeah.
What about for the two of you? Like when you so you introduce each other to your paramours or whatever.
Metamors?
Metamors. I always think of paramour. But
Yeah.
metamor, yes.
I don't know what a paramour
both
is.
work.
Paramour is just like a person that you're dating.
Metamor.
Yeah.
Let's use the terms.
Okay, let's use the terms.
Okay, so you introduce each other to your metamors. Y'all vibe. It's cool. And then one of you's like, I don't like this person anymore. I'm out. Like,
Yeah, I mean, like one time when that happened, I stayed in a band with the person that Sarah broke up with for like a year after that.
awkward. Is it?
No, it was fine.
It wasn't too bad. I mean, one of the
I
things
don't know how it
would
was for you. For me, I was like,
awkward.
"That's great. I'm glad I met this person through Sarah."
I think to maybe like get to the question underneath your question, there's a temptation to be like, breakups are fine. There are no consequences. It's fine. We figured out how to do it fine. They suck.
Yeah.
And I think that being polyamorous means you're having more of them and you're having more like intimate relationship turmoil and drama. I think that does impact how your kids experience you, how we experience each other. And I think it would be dishonest to say that I don't sometimes wonder if that's a good or a bad thing. You know, that there's like some emotional instability baked into that I think, yeah, it just does have an impact.
Yeah, you're right. And like, you know, like I went through a breakup that was like pretty rough and I felt very bad for like a couple of weeks. And I'm sure that impacted the kids. That's like a thing that that wouldn't have happened if not for polyamory.
Right.
And the kids
And I mean,
had met
the kids
that person.
asked like, what's wrong with you, Dad?
Right.
And you had to be like, I'm going through a breakup with this
Yeah,
person. And they're
right.
like, oh no, but we liked that person, you know?
Yeah,
So it's like, that's real.
Yeah.
There are real emotional consequences there. And I don't always feel totally confident about the impact on us as a family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Strained smile.
Nervous smile.
Go ahead, Reagan. How many more questions do you have?
I'm just like crossing them off.
No, but it's actually, this feels different though. I feel like in the first interview, y'all there's more of a defensiveness to it. And I don't sense that. It seems like you feel more comfortable around like the choices you've made and like, yeah, okay, sometimes there are consequences. That's true of any choice ever.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. So a lot of shit has gone down in the
It seems
interim
like
period.
You learn from it.
Yeah.
We're grown from it.
And in that same way, I always think of, I've probably mentioned this on the podcast before, but a friend of ours, BIPOC friend of ours, I was talking to her about my fear of like the kids living in a family that was different in this way and like the consequences that it might have on them. And I remember her looking at me and she's like, yeah, well, that's what a lot of us are doing, right? A lot of us are in families where we're different religions, we're different orientations, we're different races and ethnicities, we're coming from different cultural contexts, and we are navigating that. And so this is a way that you are navigating that. And it was really like a kind of, it was a gut check for sure that I think about a lot, which because I think there is like privilege and just like a lot of whiteness baked into the idea of like having the family and doing it right, having the relationships and doing it right and performing that for some expectation that
That you never agreed to or even
doesn't
necessarily
exist.
wanted.
Yeah, right. And sometimes I just notice my own lack of experience with that, you know? And that's something that I think about with the kids too, a fair amount. And I'm always kind of trying to balance that, I don't know, that tension.
Well, yeah, because like you want to make sure that they see modeled secure attachment and like understand how that works, but then also like normalizing that it's okay
Yeah. And
to
like,
be in different types of relationships with different types of people.
and people are different and families are different and you are different, and being able to experience that and hold it for yourself and with other people is kind of the point. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, like, what rules and structures have you put together around like how you're going about this? Because I feel like in the beginning you had some pretty clear delineation around like, okay, you can go out with somebody, but only if you do this, or da, da, da. And I'm just wondering like how those rules have evolved.
Yeah, I think, didn't we do an episode about that recently?
No, Reagan and you and I and Jess just got a little bit drunk on Friday and talked about it.
Okay.
I think that's what you're
That's what I'm
remembering.
thinking of. It could be, yeah.
Yes, that was
Our
great.
thing, our rules are very changing, ever changing, and to be honest, reactive to the relationships that we're in, I think. And I think part of that, one of the things that really kind of bigger things that have changed recently is I think that we've both kind of like had the revelation that there are other people in the relationships that we're in.
That they're not solely about you. Or
Yeah, and they're not solely about us as a unit, and it doesn't really work if we treat it that way. And so that's meant we need to have some like flexibility around those things, and we can't have our whole orientation be about like protecting our relationship.
And we have to be willing to feel discomfort and stretch towards other relationships, and not just expect other people are always doing that for us, which I definitely like.
Huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
And I have to just like take some responsibility for having really had that orientation for a long time in polyamory. Even when I didn't think I did. That it was like so deeply kind of internalized that I got to control what happened in Alex's other relationships and what happened in the relationships that I was in and what that meant for the two of us. I think it has taken me a long time, and I'm still doing it, of just like dismantling that idea. Like, I don't actually control any of this, that's not happening, and it's not working. Which I don't think means that there are no boundaries or agreements or expectations, but I think like I'm always trying to extract the piece where I think I can control the outcomes with them, I don't know.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So I guess in terms of like what that actually means for what the like rules and boundaries are, like some of those have shifted recently. Like there was a long period where we were like kind of trying to like avoid ever like sleeping over at other people's houses, and you're making a face like that's not the case.
Did this boundary change?
Are you fact checking me?
I'm fact checking you a little bit because I think that we always did that, but it was rare. It was kind of like treated as a thing that was like a rare and unusual.
Yeah, that's why I
thing
said
to do.
trying to avoid.
Trying to avoid. Okay. Fair enough.
And yeah, so there's things like that have like shifted.
Or like going on regular trips with people, or the kids meeting people, or having more like casual community where we hung out with metamors.
Yeah.
Having people over here when the other person isn't here.
Yeah.
Like all of those things are things that
I would say the arc was kind of like we opened our marriage, started like pretty hard and fast doing a lot of that stuff, and then like really like kind of dialed it back, and then kind of like are like, I don't know about
working your way back up to
yeah,
it, or-
with a little bit more thought around like what works and what doesn't, and like doing it because we want to, rather than because like the other people in the relationships, or like not because the other people in the relationships wanted to, but because we felt like, at least for me, like feeling like I wasn't going to be delivering enough unless I did this thing for this other person. And like, that's not as much of a self-affirmed choice or whatever. And I feel like now it's a little bit more like, here's what I want to do. And I think because of some of the dynamics between you and I changing, Sarah, like I'm a little bit more able to like judge that stuff based on what I actually want internally, not filtering all of my like desires or lack of desire for things and my preferences through Sarah, and using her as like a foil to be like, well, Sarah doesn't want me to do this thing, or she does want me to do this thing. It's like, I feel like it's much easier now to be like, I don't want to do this thing, or I do want to do this thing. And so I'm going to ask, for Sarah's like consent for me to do it.
And it's also about that like co-creating relationships. I want to be making things with people. And that includes like the relationships that I'm making with people I'm dating also include you.
Right.
It's like, it's all happening kind of together, hopefully. And trying to find ways that you can deepen relationships without doing that relationship escalator thing, and getting creative about that. That's what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are great answers.
Thank
Pretty
you.
silly.
We're getting a good grade.
So
Oh my God, nobody's getting great.
Why are we doing it?
Learning a lot.
we want head pats afterwards.
Head pats, okay. I will say, I like how this choice has forced you to think it through and to get really clear about who you are and what you want and what you need and how to communicate that to one another and to everybody else involved. Like, this feels healthy. So that's the closest to a head pat you're going to get.
Thanks, I appreciate
That's
that.
pretty good.
I'll take it.
But I am curious about how does jealousy work?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, almost done, I swear. No,
does
this is the
jealousy
root canal
work?
for Sarah, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I don't have to talk about jealousy.
I hate it so much. I wish more than anything, if I could just extract a part of my personality, it would be jealousy. If I could just do a little surgical removing of it, that's the one. And I feel like over the course of this podcast, I'm sure you can hear me just like working that out over and over and over again, and just being like, I'm going to get so good at this. I'm going to get better at it. I'm getting better at it. It's almost gone. And then it's back. It always comes back. And I guess the best I can do with that is to accept it, talk about it, try and have a sense of humor about it, and not try and fix it. I think coming to understand that I can tolerate the feeling of jealousy, and every time that it comes up, it doesn't mean that there's something going wrong. There's not something bad here that needs to be fixed. I can just feel jealous about things. It's okay. And knowing the difference between that and something that's like, no, I feel really uncomfortable, or I feel really disrespected, or, I feel not cared for. There is a difference between those feelings and feeling jealous, comparing myself to other people, worrying that I'm going to get less because somebody gets more. So I think that's like where I'm at with it, is just like, how much language can I build around this so I know the difference between these feelings and I can talk about them? How much like acceptance of them can I offer myself, and not try and change it? And I think for such a long time, especially with Alex, and especially in my relationships with men, because that is where all of my triggers around jealousy are, for sure.
So wait, this categorically doesn't come up with women?
It's really different. I would say with women, there can be like a deeper sense of envy and hurt. And a lot of that shows up for me with like by imposter stuff. Like that my relationship with women is never going to be as important as their relationship with men.
Oh, shit. So men are still the root cause of suffering?
There's always a man in every one.
There's always a man in it. And that I'm always going to have to be kind of sidelined, that the material between me and the women that I date is always going to be really, really influenced by the men in our lives. Like all of that's like the neighborhood of jealousy that I'll feel in my relationships with women. With men, I just think I have so many triggers around men. And I have been thinking about this a lot because in like trauma-informed therapy, like when you're working with someone who's just like getting triggered a lot, one of the first things they'll say to do is eliminate the triggers, right? What triggers can we eliminate?
Stop dating men.
Right. Yes.
But you
You
don't
want
do
to
that.
eliminate all men?
Yeah, you heard it here. That's the poll quote for social media. And I cannot eliminate that trigger in my life.
Some say
argue
that
I
you
could mitigate
could.
it.
Well,
Yes.
present company excluded, I think,
Like,
right?
I am.
Yeah, you, Alex, that's fine. But like,
I am married to a man, and I am attracted to men, and I did for a long time not date men very much in the hopes that I would be able to like eliminate this trigger from my life. Mm-hmm. And I think that did help me work through some of it. I think that was a good choice. I wouldn't take that back. But one of the things that I noticed is like all of the triggering got concentrated on Alex, because like that's where the outlet could still be. So I don't know, like that's kind of inconclusive. I would say dating a man more seriously now, again, for the first time in a really long time, I'm like, oh, great, this stuff comes back. I didn't get rid of it.
Sad cartoon noise.
And it is a really sad cartoon noise. And it makes me really frustrated and want to run away. And just, again, be like, I'm eliminating the triggers. But I think that's not my path.
Unsurprisingly, Sarah runs into the danger.
I'm like, this path is so uncomfortable. Let's stay on this one. And yeah, so that's kind of where I am with it, is I am just like, this is a reality in my life. I think I have done some good internal work around it, but I don't think it's ever going to go away. And I think like my relationship to it has to always take that into consideration. And I meet these people who claim not to get jealous. I date people who claim not to get jealous. Or like when they say they're jealous, it just seems like they're faking to try to make me feel better. And
I'm really jealous about that.
Yeah, right?
And I wonder what it feels like in their minds. But that's not mine.
What does it feel like in your mind when you're jealous?
Hectic. And scared. Yeah, definitely. And like so much of it, I mean, I'm a therapist that works specifically with attachment and attachment like trauma and wounding. It's all early life stuff that gets like easily attached to intimate relationships with men for a variety of reasons. My father. But, that's what it is. And that's the work you don't get rid of that work. That's just the work, the material you have to engage with in this life. But I take heart in that the way that I engage with it is changing. And I guess this is where I'd maybe ask the three of you if that feels true.
The way that you're engaging with jealousy is changing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a lot more. I appreciated a second ago that you made this distinction between what is like a feeling of jealousy and what is a feeling of like not being cared for or treated in the way that you want. Yeah. And like the first one is a thing that you can, that you have to kind of manage on your own, and like you can acknowledge to your partners or people who are like kind of like not the source of that feeling, but the people who that feeling is connected to, but like they can't fix it for you.
No.
And then, but knowing the difference between that and something that they can fix before you, because it's like behavior that they're doing that
is disrespectful
or, is mistreatment. Like, I think you know the difference between those things. And so like when you come to me with like a feeling of jealousy, you don't come to me with it like, I'm like very susceptible to the idea that it's like, I did something wrong. And I would say that was like a big dynamic in a lot of our relationship for a long time.
I did learn, I don't know, halfway through this experiment that I often should start with, this is not your fault, you haven't done anything wrong. And it is interesting with men. That is a very important neutralizing thing to say.
Their shoulders come down, they're like, ooh.
Yeah. And I was like, what's coming next is a feeling. You haven't done anything wrong, And I feel like that's a skill that I've learned in being in relationship with men. I don't know if that's because I'm provoking something in them or if it's just like some man shit. But damn, it really seems like they need to hear that before they hear my feelings.
Well, and like to my point earlier, isn't it interesting that you know that more now as not just a thing about me, but as a thing about men in general, right? Because you've had that experience with some other men in general.
Yep.
And it's good for me to know that too.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
Well, there's a couple things that are coming up. One is Bell Hooks wrote, of course, an incredible book called The Will to Change, and it's about like men and
just
masculinity.
talking about that.
We were just talking about
telling
that
Sarah to
today.
get me that book for Christmas.
Yes.
It's a really good book.
Okay.
You get it for him for sure.
Okay.
But a thing that I got from that book or that like surprised me was just I feel like she really did a deep dive on the ways in which men are not socialized to have feelings and how
Right.
resentful they sometimes become of women having feelings.
That's right. Yeah.
And it like explained to me like
Yes.
kind of just the culture of jokes around that, like, oh, women, you're always having all these irrational feelings, which always feels so invalidating when it's like, no, we're just having regular feelings and we want to talk about it. And they're like, yeah, but we don't get to do that. So why bring that to me?
Right.
Like, I'm not equipped to then have to deal with your feelings unless they are my fault. And then, even then, there's an anger or resentment
Yes.
that shows up.
Yeah.
I think that's so true, and that then sometimes men will only express their feelings in romantic relationships with women, and that becomes like overly
Right.
burdensome
That's, like,
in this
level
other
2.
Don't
direction.
have no
Yeah.
friends.
That's like
Yeah.
the second level of like no feelings, then I only have feelings with you. And the other thing I would like to add there is I do think that men are afraid of women's feelings, and in particular anger. Again, I don't know if this is an experience other women have, but I feel like the second that my feelings veer into anger, it's like you can almost watch a man just like pack up his little suitcase and walk out the fucking door.
Little hobo bingo.
Yeah, he was like, I'm out. He was like, anxiety. I like that because that like makes me feel kind of like powerful and
I
strong.
have a role. I have a job. I can
Make you
through
feel
that.
better about that. Sadness. I kind of like that too because it makes you vulnerable, and especially if it's not directly in relationship to me.
Like, I didn't make you sad.
I
but
didn't
you're
make you sad, but
sad.
you're sad. And I'm going to kind of like care for you in that respect. Anger, fuck no. Like I still don't know that I have actually successfully been able to express like anger that wasn't like me being highly dysregulated or like fighting, but just like anger as a feeling that I have without it seeming like it totally shut men down.
Oh, I mean, that's my experience of all people.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask is do you think that goes beyond the like person in a position of power or privilege having a hard
but-
time hearing
Yeah.
from the people who, aren't in that position?
Black women and anger, like, it's a whole trope.
Right, yeah.
Like, where, like, honestly, like, we do not get to be angry, and especially not in any type of professional situation. Like, that is not accessible. Like, even when
Yeah.
I'm, like, mildly upset about something, I've been, like, reprimanded. Whereas, like,
Right.
I'll watch, like, a white colleague, like, literally cry her eyes out, and, like, I'm like, oh, but that's appropriate in this setting. Like, she gets to have all these emotions and I get to have like joy or nothing. Like joy or neutrality. That's it. Be a jolly fat Black person. Santa,
Yeah.
Mrs. Claus, or, be neutral.
Do you think that part of that, I think you were getting at this, Alex, is because people with more privilege and power in these dynamics are aware of how
Their
much
role in
right
my rage?
to anger you have and are terrified to face it even in the smallest dosage?
I think that explains so much about America.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah. Yes. And the terror of Black people having the emotions we deserve to have over what life has been like here. Like that terror has actually been more debilitating than outright racism, if that makes sense. Like I experience that way more frequently than I do like somebody trying to like burn a cross on my yard.
Right.
It's more like, oh, you're becoming very inconvenient and uncomfortable to be around. So we're gonna, get that suitcase, roll it up, and deuces. Tend to yourself emotionally.
You're going to experience the racism, and we don't want you to have any feelings about it in front of us ever, or perhaps just ever.
Or I want to control
What those are.
what you express or what, and when I feel uncomfortable, it's over now. Like you don't get to continue to do that. Heaven forbid Black people have any type of agency over like our own bodies, our own emotions, our own any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, bring in the mood. Write down. But
Yeah.
circling back around to jealousy.
Yeah, I'm like, how do we segue? Yeah. We could do it.
I mean, well, no, because I did kind of want to hear Alex talk a little bit more about like how jealousy is functioning or doesn't function for you.
Yes, there was a lot of things I felt like I wanted to say about that. Now I'm going to remember what they were. It's definitely there. It might have been when we had this conversation the last time, like 2 years ago. I might have said something about being not feeling jealousy very much. I wouldn't be surprised if I said that. I do feel differently about that now because I've experienced it in a bunch of different like realms and in a bunch of different relationships. And, you know, like we were talking about a minute ago, it's definitely hard to, it's like a visceral enough of a feeling that it is very hard to like recognize when it's like you and it's not like what the other person is doing or whether the other person, like something that the other person can like fix for you. And I think it comes up around some like kind of weird stuff for me sometimes. You know, sometimes like around like sort of like intellectual things with Sarah, like if I feel like she's having more of a like intellectual connection with probably specifically with another man, then like that's something I would be jealous of.
Interesting.
It's probably also true, like you were saying, Sarah, that like I tend to be like far less jealous of your relationships with women.
That's interesting.
However,
Why?
I would say in the context, why?
Yeah, because like, I mean, this is my bias. What if the women are smart?
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. Do you want me to tell you like the real dark shit around this?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do not stand by this at all. I think like perhaps other men have this as well, have an internalized fear of women's uncontrolled sexuality. And the idea that they could...
All the women are like, wait, what?
Yeah. Like sluttiness. Okay. And like the idea that like women can't control their own like sexual desire and they're going to do things that are harmful to them or the collective because of that. Which like this is like a cultural trope, right? Like it is there.
It's
Girls Gone Wild.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah.
It's just so funny because I think, if I may, from the women's perspective here, it's also, I am navigating that as much as I'm navigating the idea that I'm like sexually repressed and uptight and am only ever going to actually learn about my sexuality through a man who knows more about it than I do.
Well, and
okay.
Yeah, and men are socialized to want women to be mega sluts for them and only them. Right? And like not, so like we have this fear of like that happening with other men in other realms. But then like, of course, we want like women to be like sexually available to us. So yeah, why does it not play out? Why is it not the same with women?
Yeah.
Because other men are more dangerous than
Dangerous
women.
In what sense? I mean, I don't
like,
disagree, but
dangerous that they could like harm you, dangerous that they're more of like a threat to like I'm in competition with them. They're more of a threat to me physically. Like there certainly is like a more higher level jealousy that is like women are gonna give up on men altogether. Certainly a thing. Although it seems like the connection and those cross-gender dynamics between men and women are so fucking compelling. Like you're saying that like women continue to date men in spite of it not being
in our best interest.
In your best interest, yeah.
I'm
kind
like,
of.
I have the poutiest look on my face right now.
I'm like appreciative of you being willing to do it, honestly.
Thanks for taking one for the team, Sarah.
Well, I mean, you too, Reagan.
Oh, no.
But I guess Sarah's biased.
Yeah, I'm bi.
You don't have a choice.
Much
yeah.
less of an excuse.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, if I was like a quarter bi, I would set it all on fire and never date another man again.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah. Right.
Nothing. Like it's
no, it's
everybody's just we have the things that we're born with, our likes, our dislikes, our preferences.
And, like, I want to say it's like worth doing. It is worth doing.
Just the man arguing that it's worth dating men.
I mean, as a man who, it would be easier for me in a lot of ways if Sarah never dated another man other than me, because I wouldn't have to deal with any of this like jealousy that I'm talking about, right? But I'm very glad that she does, because like it's good for her and me to like heal around some of these things, and it's like good for everybody in society.
So that's why I'm doing it.
That's why Sarah needs to do it.
You're welcome, society.
Yeah. So I thank
I don't know
you.
why I'm just seeing like the
Please
picture
send
of
me
like
tips.
that cow that like holding up a sign that's eat more chicken, or like
Yeah.
I don't know, like
Right.
it's giving eat more chicken.
Yeah.
But I super appreciate that. I've been curious, like, have y'all ever considered adding a permanent third? Whoop, adventure.
Are they?
Oh no, everybody got real like weird.
Wait, is this a third where all three of us are like in a sexual romantic relationship
Yeah.
together? Or
Ooh, does that sound stressful? Because Sarah's giving the real "I'm stressed out" face.
I mean,
I
doing-
believe I started rocking
She's
back.
rocking.
Yes. Did I break your brain here?
I mean, yeah, and they're probably like, you know, a really attractive woman who's like in her like mid 20s.
Oh my God,
like
Sarah
that.
Light?
Really likes to do like
Another Sarah,
housework.
yes. Oh wow! Oh,
my
he said
God.
housework.
Oh, my
Alex,
God.
don't get
So
canceled over
bad.
this. Come on.
I'm kidding.
So bad. I think that this is actually a kind of common question that we get asked.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think I would be open to it, and I also am just aware of how rare of an opportunity that would be. Like, it would be pretty unique to find a circumstance where that felt like we could pursue it and it would make sense. I don't think I would categorically be opposed to it. I just think that it's not super on offer. I don't know. What do you think?
I think if Jessica died and we met somebody who was really good at podcast production and who shared all of our values and wanted to, and was like, had the same ideas about like communal living and really was good at managing.
Jessica wanted to be romantically involved with us, is what you're saying.
I mean, that would be simpler than the me dying scenario.
I don't know. This all feels really complicated.
I'm making a joke about how we have a dynamic that is similar to that in a lot of ways, as we've talked about in the podcast in the past, other than
you're the silent
romantic.
monogamous third. Not so silent.
Or we're
third.
just not. Basically, we once looked at like our relationship agreements according to relationship anarchy, and basically we have everything you can possibly have in a relationship besides sex and kink. I think we're like the two things that
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
we don't have together. So
That's hilarious. Y'all so greedy.
So we
Why you need
are-
to go out and get more people?
That was your idea.
Well, yeah, we're not
I felt a little jealous when you asked them if they were going to get a third because they have one.
No.
Well, yeah, it is true. I mean, we are life partners. We're like literally moving into a new house together. But I mean, like that.
So now I have the question for Curtis. No.
Curtis, get in here.
How do you feel about a permanent fifth?
But yeah, I think this kind of speaks to, I mean, like people you want to like live with and share your life with and be partnered with in that way. I mean, we do, like you, we live in non-traditional ways and we have non-romantic life partners and we have non-traditional relationships. But that shit is rare to find the people you want to do that with. It's hard work. And I'll be honest, I think bringing in sex and romantic intimacy into that with multiple people where that's all being shared, that would be a very new kind of experience for me. And I know that people do that and navigate it well. And I think like, it sounds a little bit scary, you know?
Yeah, I think what is more likely is that we would very slowly over time move extremely deeply into community with somebody who one of us was dating
I
to
could
the
see
point
too.
that they were like, we had a similar relationship that we do to like some of our really close friends where we go back for a long time, and the like romantic sexual element of the relationship continues
Yeah.
with that person. It being a like, we're going to meet somebody together and like subsume them into that world. That would be a real fucking project that I don't think is.
And I'm not
super
sure that
likely.
many people would be lining up for that experience either. Especially if you said subsume. Like,
Subsume, yeah. Who wants to be subsumed?
But also just kind of based on like your answers around like the ways in which you're going about dating, it makes sense that maybe like since that's not a part of your goal, like you're not looking for people who would be good candidates for that anyway.
Right.
But I'm like, actually, when I asked Jess, like, since Curtis is not here,
He does listen to every episode.
oh,
so.
absolutely, I have no doubt. Shout out, hi Curtis.
hi, Curtis.
But I'm curious, like, what has been his response, or how has he navigated you having this permanent third of Sarah and your
Right.
and third and fourth.
And yeah.
Thank you.
I'm gonna count you too, Alex. But I do like since Sarah and Jessica like kind of were first.
That's true.
like,
Barely, but okay, fine.
Here's a way. Like this is. I don't want you to like become neurotic or like more jealous of women, but I'm also like women have really deeply intimate relationships with one another.
Yeah.
So even like if your timeline is similar,
Jessica and I have a really deeply intimate logistical relationship.
We do. We
But
share a
Reagan,
lot of
to your
spreadsheets.
point,
Yeah.
I think the relationships that the depth and intimacy that women can create with each other are ultimately more disruptive for the community. And I think it's
Absolutely.
interesting that men
Yeah.
will be like, but if you get too wild and slut around with this guy, it could really fuck up the big thing we got going here.
ain't
And I'm
nobody
like,
thinking about that guy
that
next
is
week.
not the thing that's gonna change
Yeah.
the DNA of what we have going on. It's far more likely to be a really deep, intimate relationship between women.
That.
Because
Like,
Yeah.
I see the threat. Like when
Yeah.
Alex said that, I was like,
I know. I
That's
just
not
like
good.
wanted to call that thing out. I know that it's ridiculous, but I wanted to call it out because I don't think it's just me. I think it's like such a thing, and it is fucking weird.
I
like,
have never dated a man who had any jealousy around me being with women,
right. Yeah.
ever.
which is crazy to me.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm
it
just
makes
like,
me feel like y'all don't see what it is then.
and then I'm just like,
Yeah.
and that's where like the bi erasure and all of that bi
But it's
insecurity
like-
comes from.
It's just like patriarchy, right? Like if you're doing something that's outside of the patriarchy, then it's not like really threatening to the patriarchy, maybe in the same way.
I would disagree with that.
Yep.
Or like there's a sense that there's no
Right,
power
it's almost
over
like
there.
you're creating a parallel system, though,
Right.
for that you're building, and that then after you smash the existing system, you
There
can
will
just
be
move
this
into
one
the
that
new
you
one.
built over
Right.
here.
Right, like
See?
that's-
Yeah.
Already fucking rich. And
Yeah, and then I'll be left over here doing my own laundry, I guess. Which I do. I do now. I
We're
do
going
do
to
my own
Jessica.
laundry.
Jessica.
Okay.
Save this man. Save this man from the danger he doesn't even know he's in.
Yeah, well, so it's interesting with Curtis. I mean, when I was like dating before marrying Curtis, oftentimes in my dating life, issues of jealousy about my like chosen family and the relationship I have with Sarah, Alex, and lots of other people was an issue in past relationships. Like people were jealous, they were mad, they felt like competitive with you guys. And so to me, it was like a big filter, like I don't want to be in a relationship with someone who is jealous of my best friends. I want to be in a relationship with someone who sees this as a good thing, like that they love my friends. They want to be like, they want to get lucky and get invited
Free
into
friends.
this cool community, like, and so if somebody didn't see it that way, I was like, well, this is not going to work out.
Yeah, that's a good dating filter.
Yeah, totally. And I think Curtis got that, and it's not like immediately he was like, okay, relationship anarchy, we're going to like go on how,
do
like,
this.
day 2 where, there's been a learning curve and like an adaptation to that too. But I think he feels really deeply embedded in this community and part of it, and would call you guys his best friends. I don't know if he's ready to say that we're a quadruple. But maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
Is that what we're working towards?
Yeah, goals, like you said,
Yeah.
relationship goals.
Yeah. But yeah, I will be curious also to hear what he has to say after listening to this episode. So
Well, Curtis, give me a call.
send your comments.
I want to hear what you think.
All right. I feel like we're running up on our pick up the kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Reagan, do you have one last one for us?
Ooh, one last question. Oh my gosh. Okay. Sex parties. No.
We talked about that last episode. We'll be out next week.
That's what everybody wants to know. Everyone wants to know about sex parties.
There's one here right after you leave, actually. That's why we need to wrap it up.
All right, wrapping it up. All right, see you later. No, ultimate takeaways
From
for this grand experiment that we call What the What?
Yeah. I think the ultimate takeaway for me is that it's gotten me closer to myself and other people. Mm-hmm. And that's actually all I really want. And, I think about my ex, one of my favorite things that she said, she'd always say, Sarah, what else are we doing? Right?
Like,
what's more important?
Yeah, that's literally what I was about to say. Like, what the fuck else are we doing in this life than like building like relationships with people?
And
Why
learning
would you
about
want to
ourselves.
do that less? It's
Yeah. And so I think that's just like the big takeaway for me is that this is a tool for me to do that. I don't want it to be the only one.
Yeah.
And I think though, like relationships like ours is evidence to me that it's not. But yeah, it is kind of all I want to be doing. That and making stuff. That's it.
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's keep doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
This is where we start our side podcast. That is the four of us talking.
Okay.
Mistakes
Reagan.
were not made.
Yeah.
It would be called We Are Perfect.
We are perfect. That's going to be really popular. Perfect takes.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Reagan.
thanks for being
Thanks
on.
for wanting to do this.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for answering all my really invasive questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again, Reagan. And thank
pleasure.
you. If you want to hear more from us, you can find Mistakes Were Made on Instagram, and you can subscribe to the podcast on your platform of choice.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
We'll be back.
Bye.